So we are rolling. Can you introduce yourselves?
Hi, I'm Gordon from Volk.
And I'm Stephen from Volk.
Can you guys tell me about your new album? What's it called and how did it come about?
The new album's called Approaching Polaris, and it's a concept album in 8 parts about a fictional voyage to the North Star, Polaris, and back, and the fact that it's an ill-fated voyage for the people on the spaceship, and we created a musical soundtrack to evoke those feelings of being in space and the danger and the excitement.
Stephen, what is your kind of role in Volk? How would you describe it?
Somewhat involved in the composition, but generally I'm production work, I would say. So Gordon composes, he's the main composer, and I take my role after that and try and get it to be as exciting as it can be.
How long have you been working together, Gordon, do you think?
We've been working together for about 4 decades, probably.
A long time.
All the way from high school.
All the way from high school.
We work collaboratively and we work separately. A lot of the times I'll come up with initial ideas for music and I'll pass it on to Stephen, and he'll take that 2D idea and he'll turn it into a 3D final product.
I think that's my job, to try and discern the sort of the body of the thing and then exaggerate that somewhat. I think that's what I'm trying to
and
do.
improve on it.
Well, yes, but
Does Stephen edit for you, do you think, in that role? Edit the music a wee bit, arrange?
Yeah, adds to the compositional element of it, creates a more expansive edit, a much better mix and mastering and overall production job. Basically makes it the final product.
What sort of format does the music come to you, Stephen, from Gordon?
I would say sort of very polished demo. It's to me, we could release it almost as it is, but at that point I'm really, as I say, my job is to sort of sit back and be a somewhat separate for it, to be an ear for it, and to identify the parts that for me really come out and see if I can take them a bit further. And whether you would notice how much difference you would notice, I'm not entirely sure, but that's a compliment to Gord's composition. I generally don't really have to inject myself too much into the composition. I love what I hear, so it really is honing it and trying to make it as enjoyable at the end as possible.
Steve's been a little bit humble here, because everything that I do he improves upon, without fail, 100% of the time.
Like a trusted ear?
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
I think it's important, isn't it, to... You have to remain aloof from it a bit. I do believe that. So you have to be a harsh critic, but at the same time you're always going to be excited by new work, and really that's how the projects, I think, identify themselves. The music that absolutely forces itself into your consciousness, and then you have to work on it. And as I say, I'm very fortunate, so I love the process.
What kind of music did you grow up with, Gordon?
I grew up with independent guitar-y type music from late 70s, early 80s. So you're talking Joy Division, Echo and the Bunnymen, New Order, Teardrop Explodes, bands like that, and just gradually embracing various different types, going into acid house, going into soundtracks, which is probably where this project Approaching Polaris came from, because Steve and I have got a massive love of soundtracks and a love of 70s instrumental soundtracks in particular, Vangelis and Jean-Michel Jarre, Mike Oldfield. So it was born out of that love and being able to take an idea, in this case a space idea, and wind a story around it and create this narrative that we could then expand upon, because the album started off as a single track and then it just expanded beyond that, as though we're expanding through space, the story, it grew arms and legs. It became like a voyage. It was a voyage just to write it, but it also tells the story of a musical voyage as well.
Stephen, what music was being played in the house when you were a teenager, when you were young? What
when
kind
I was
of
young,
stuff?
it was obviously none of it was mine. So my dad was a massive music lover, but he didn't play any music. So he'd experienced it in like the big band very close by, big band groups, and he loved crooners and all that kind of stuff.
I remember a lot of Elvis.
My brother loved Elvis,
Uh-huh.
so there was loads of that. My sister, one of my sisters was sort of Motown, Stevie Wonder type of stuff. My other sister was more like, she liked Status Quo and things like that. So I heard all of these things. Wasn't really in love with any of them. My first sort of musical sort of fascination was things like Adam and the Ants, and then I heard things like Ultravox and Visage and all these kind of things, and that was it for me until, so I would say that, and then into like Depeche Mode, OMD, so really electronic stuff, until basically like New Order and Joy Division, and that sort of changed everything. And then I had a further sort of jump, I would say, maybe in my mid-20s when I kind of really got into like soundtracks, and that became my main interest, I would say.
Early shows, Gordon, who would you say was your earliest mind-blowing show that you attended?
That's a good question. I'd probably say New Order in the early mid-80s. New Order, Happy Mondays. Usually seen them in Glasgow Barrowlands, and always a great show. You queue up early doors, try and get in at the front, and just that sense of big gigs and being down the front and experiencing that connection between the band and the audience. I think that's something we would like to embrace as well.
Oh yeah. Recent shows, Stephen? Have you been to see anyone recently, like last night?
Been to see Sparks, whom I just, that's only the second time I've ever seen them.
Why have Sparks lasted so long, do you think?
I just think it's the sort of the individuality of the writing, and just this solid unit seems impenetrable. They seem to be coming to the same place, but I mean, it's the writing. It has to be the writing, really, because it's so idiosyncratic. It just, and I just fell in love with that. I can't help myself. So, but I'm like Gordon with the early shows. New Order was it for me. The first time I saw them, it was the first time I'd seen a band playing where it wasn't revolving around this really polished show. It was just raw, and there wasn't any going back after that. And then the next one I'd say was Hugo Largo, which was, at that point, it was the most individualistic thing I'd ever seen. Was
that with that Petrol Emotion?
Yeah.
Who I think are back together.
Oh right, I didn't know that. I left after Hugo Largo. I didn't see that Petrol Emotion.
Upcoming shows, Gordon? Anything that we should be looking into, or have you been discovering anything recently? Soundtracks?
I would probably say more kind of krautrock type, harking back to the 70s. Early 80s German and French disco electro stuff. I love anything that's got an electronic vibe to it, particularly when it's the more authentic early 80s, mid 80s stuff, not the mainstream electronica that would break into the charts, but the stuff that fits under the radar, kind of slides under the radar. But definitely the German influences there throughout the Volk album and throughout other stuff that we're involved in as well.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay.